Hello, everyone. I think it is working now. Please let me know in the chat if you can hear me or see me or anything, because this webinar is starting out to be very 2020, right? Am I right? Which is ironic because that's the whole subject of today's webinar. I think it's working now. I see people coming in on the thing. So happy Monday in November. Oh my goodness. So sorry for all of the crazy confusion. Thank you guys for sticking with us and joining us. Praise, we are live and working. All right, way to go. Way to go, team, the team behind the scenes that fixed all of this and made it work. Okay, perfect, you guys. We're gonna dive in really quick. We've already lost 15 minutes off of this, but I'm so excited to be with you guys today. I'm very excited to share today's topic, which is 7 ways to save your marriage, even when 2020 has sucked. And heaven knows that this is so true for this year, right? But we're going to talk about positive things today. We're going to be focusing on what you can do to make real, relevant, lasting change in your marriage, even if your spouse is done, even if your marriage is on the rocks, even if all the terrible things have happened or are happening in the middle of this year. There are still things that you can do to move forward and to make real change happen in your marriage. So first of all, now that I can see you guys, I can see you on the chat, I can see all of those things, which my heart's just so happy to be able to see that. I first want to ask you where you are from. I always love seeing where all over the world people are joining us from, and how and whether this is your first webinar or not. So go ahead and use the chat function on your screen and go ahead and just type in where you're joining from and whether or not this is your first webinar that you've ever been to with Marriage Helper. So great, people from Los Angeles and Colorado, New Hampshire, Canada, and a lot of people saying this is their second webinar. So welcome, glad to see you. More people from California, Topeka, Kansas, New York, California, Sussex, England, Australia, Denmark, McMinnville, Tennessee, right down the road from where I live near Nashville, London, Wollongong, Australia, super fun. A lot of first-time webinars, someone from Cyprus, more from England, Banff, Fort Worth, Texas, Virginia, Florida, first-time webinar, Kenya, first webinar, welcome, Montgomery, Alabama. My whole mom's side of the family is from Montgomery, welcome. So a lot of people first webinar, a lot of people from all over the world and all over America. Thank you so much for taking your time today, whether it's your lunch break or for some of you, it may be nighttime where you are across the world. No matter where you are, thank you so much for taking the time to join me and to invest in doing something that's going to make change happen in your marriage. The next question that I want to ask you is, what one word would you use right now to describe your marriage? So what one word would you use to describe your marriage right now? Now, this one's a little bit more of a thinker. You might not have this on the tip of your tongue, especially since I said one word. And I know someone out there is going to put a bunch of hyphens to make one word out of 15 words. So we have pre-reconciliation, broken, separated. Oh, failed. Oh, we're going to change that. We're going to change that. Disconnected, turnaround, disconnected. I'm seeing a lot of that of separated or disconnected, confusing, divided, painful. You're probably hearing me say some of these words and thinking, oh, yes, that sounds like me too. Turbulent, rock bottom. So all of you who have come here today, no matter what has happened in the past couple of months, past couple of days, even the past couple of hours, you probably came here today feeling alone, confused, and not knowing what to do. But I'm telling you that there are multiple people here who are in the same boat as you, the same shoes that you are in, feeling the way that you feel. And what I wholeheartedly believe is that through what we speak about and what I teach you in this webinar today, my hope is that at the end, that you will have hope again. While you may not be able to change some of these words immediately, like separated, that maybe some of these words like confused, You'll be able to change that and say direction. You feel like you have a direction to go. Or people who are saying turbulent and painful, that after this webinar today, you will feel like you have hope, like you have direction, purpose, that even though it's turbulent, you know how to bring some calm to the middle of the chaos that you're in. That is the hope that I have for what our time together today does for you. For those of you who are on your first webinar with us, my name is Kimberly Holmes. I'm the CEO here at Marriage Helper. That MA next to my name means that I have my master's in psychology. I'm also currently in my PhD program for psychology as well. So who knows how long, hopefully sooner than later, I'll have that PhD behind my name too, which is really just a degree of perseverance, if I have to say so myself. But that is a little bit about me. I am a wife to my husband, Rob. I am a mom to my beautiful children, Gumi, my daughter, and Arrow, my son. And I'm also a speaker. I'm the CEO of Marriage Helper, like I said, and you've probably seen Marriage Helper in some other places like on Fox Business, The Today Show, Good Morning America, Dave Ramsey Show, Montel Williams, even in People Magazine, Celebrity Parents, which all sound fine and dandy. But what I really want you to hear first is this, that no matter what led you here, what I'm going to teach you over the next several minutes are going to be what you need to hear in your situation. What I teach you will be the key principles that are the underlying foundation in any marriage situation, guaranteed. This year has sucked. And I, more than anyone, want this mug so bad in my house. I miss precedented times. I miss when we had an idea of what could come next and we understood the things that would happen and go. And even if you separate your relationship in your marriage right now from everything that has happened, here's the thing. The events of this year, no matter where in the world you live, the events of this year have impacted your marriage. For better or for worse, it has made an impact. Even strong marriages that didn't have many problems going into 2020 have suffered. They have struggled. And for marriages where things had been hidden under the rug, swept under the rug, and problems not dealt with for the past couple of months, years, maybe even decades, well, 2020 did not let any of those things stay under there because the rug was pulled out from under everyone, thrown away, and now we have to deal with the dirt and the mud that has been sitting under there for so long. So you are not alone in the added stress, the added uncertainty, the added frustration that just piled on even more this year. And yes, it is making things worse. That doesn't mean that you have no control. That doesn't mean that there's no hope. That doesn't mean that things can't change, because I believe everything can change. Everything can be shifted and the perspective about it turned around, even if that's the only thing that happens. That's a huge step forward in the right direction. But all of these things have been exacerbated even more this year. It's likely made your marriage even worse, and you aren't alone. And one of the things that you're dying to know is, can I save my marriage? Can I do something that will change the trajectory of this? And many of you probably feel hopeless because this year has felt hopeless. We have been at the mercy of something that we literally don't have control over. You can't change anything about what's happening in the world right now. Yes, we can do small things in our relationships and community that make change. That's not what I'm saying right now. But more than anything, this year has led to an increase in anxiety. I believe anxiety is up 30% this year. Because there's this feeling of, I have no control. And you may feel this even more about your marriage. You may feel this even more because this year has led you to think that maybe you don't have control. But what I want to encourage you with today is you have more opportunity to do things than you even realize that will make a difference in the future of your marriage. The truth is, I cannot guarantee that your marriage will be saved. But I can guarantee that if anything works, this will. The things that I teach you today, if anything works, these are the foundational principles that will work to help you save your marriage, bring your spouse back, and have a stronger and better marriage than ever before. And here is number one. You need to stop the push behaviors. For those of you who are new to Marriage Helper, or this is your first webinar that you've been on, then you may be not as familiar with the term push behaviors. I'll explain it in just a minute. But these are basically things where if you engage in these behaviors, your intention behind them is that it will bring your spouse closer to you, that you will end up getting them to stay with you, get them to listen to you, all of these things. But in fact, actually what these things do are push your spouse further away. And these behaviors are things such as pleading, begging, whining. So if you have ever, well, let me explain it this way. There's been many people that I've worked with, actually, back when I did coaching, which was several years ago at Marriage Helper, when I would speak to people and they would tell me the things that they would do when their spouse wanted to leave the house. They would begin pleading, begging, getting down on their hands and knees, grabbing their spouse's feet, trying to keep them from going out the door. They would hide the keys. They would get their spouse's car keys, hide them, throw them in the oven. They would just do all of these things to try and force their spouse to stay. And what they were doing, the intention behind it was, I love you so much, I don't want you to leave. But the way it came across looked like control to the spouse wanting out, which pushed them out the door even further. So these are behaviors that they might come from a place of, I really want you to stay. But the way that you're doing it is just pushing your spouse out the door even further. So pleading, begging, whining, unengaged. So the P stands for the pleading, begging, whining. The U is for unengaged. Another type of push behavior is if you decide to turn off, to ignore your spouse, to stonewall them, and hope that by ignoring them, they'll see what they're missing and they'll want to come back. So if you start to unengage with your spouse, then this is what leads to more push behaviors. It all stems from, and I won't go too much into detail here, but it all stems and goes back to what's known as attachment theory. And when you're in a secure attachment, which is what all of us want, and this is studied with children and healthy relationships as you move forward. I don't have time to go into depth about it, but basically what you need to know is there's 4 types of attachment. And it's how stable and safe you feel inside of a relationship. And if people end up where they don't feel safe and secure is the only good one. The other 3, one of them is called preoccupied. This is a very anxious person who does a lot of the pleading, begging, whining, crying. They do all of these things. Another one is the avoidant person, to where they're trying to elicit reaction from their significant other by avoiding them, by ignoring them. And both of these are ways to try and protect yourself, but neither of them are healthy. So if you're pleading, it's a push behavior. If you're ignoring and you're unengaged, it's a push behavior. Another one is starting unnecessary fights. So if you and your spouse have had a communication cycle over the past several months or years where you really just fight all the time, then it may be that you subconsciously or consciously are starting more fights with your spouse because you feel like that's the only way you can get them to engage in a conversation with you. But it's not healthy, and it's really just putting another mindset into your spouse or belief in your spouse that you can't have good or productive conversation. Hovering is what the H is for. So hovering, controlling, tracking. So if you try and break into your spouse's email or their Facebook or social media, if you're putting a tracker or GPS tracker on their car to see where they're going, these are push behaviors. Things that your spouse, if they were to find out that you were doing things like that, they would be livid. And you might be saying, but they're the one doing something wrong. It doesn't matter, because you're just giving them further ammunition to be angry with you and to disengage from the relationship the more you engage in these behaviors. So if this is what your relationship looks like, if this picture to you, and you can flip the genders It doesn't matter. It could be the wife doing that to the husband. It could be the wife is yelling and the husband is just leaving, doesn't want to hear it. But if the premise of this picture looks like what your relationship looks like, then you're probably engaging in some push behaviors and you need to stop them. And here's the thing. You can really do a good job justifying to yourself that you need to do these things. Don't, because they don't work and they're not going to help. The second one is don't stop all contact. So some people hear that first thing I say, stop the push behaviors, and they think, oh my gosh, I can't do anything. I don't know what to do. I'm so scared. I'm just going to stop talking at all. I'm going to stop engaging. I'm just going to stop because I don't want to make anything worse. That's not what we're going for here either. Or you may be coming from the other side where you've heard of this newfangled thing all over YouTube called no contact. Well, I need to do no contact because that's what everyone is saying you need to do on YouTube, on the internet, on whatever. And the whole premise behind it is if you stop communication for a period of time, anywhere from 14 to 60 days, then the person, your significant other, your spouse, will see that they've missed you. They'll see that you're living your best life. They'll want to come back and they'll come crawling back to you. Just don't. The reason that no contact, it might work for people who are dating, I don't know, but it's a form of manipulation. If you're going to manipulate your spouse to try and come back to you, then what's going to keep them there once you've done that? Someone just commented and said, yeah, that didn't work. No, it doesn't work. It doesn't work because it's not building a foundation for positive communication habits in your relationship. So what happens next when you get in a fight a year later after you've reconciled? Are you just going to ignore each other for 30 days in order to get over the fight? No, you have to learn how to have a good balance of communication in your relationship. So don't completely disengage, but don't push either. What we teach at Marriage Helper is called smart contact. Many of you probably have heard about it. You can find more about it on YouTube. We have a smart contact toolkit. I won't go too much into it now, but basically the premise is you need to learn how to stabilize your communication and how to do it in a way that is research driven, proven to work in the lives of others, and is something that's easy to follow. We're not telling you ignore your spouse because that's ridiculous. If your spouse has requested that you leave them alone for a period of time, then we're not saying that you need to bombard them with text messages, emails, and voicemails every single day either, because you're going to end up pushing them away. You have to find the balance of what makes sense. So don't do the push behaviors and don't stop all communication. Find the balance of how to have positive communication, which leads us to the third point, which is don't poison the well or burn bridges. I just added this point in today because there have been so many times that I have seen people who turn to social media, or they turn to their best friends, or they turn to all of their family members, and they start telling them about everything their spouse has done wrong. And what ends up happening when you do that is the reason people do it, first of all, the reason that if you're doing that, probably the reason you're doing it is because you're alleviating some of your own anxiety. You're wanting that support system. You're wanting someone to go to. You need to vent. And I do believe that is healthy, but I don't think you should just go to anyone. And we'll talk more about that later. Because what ends up happening when you go to social media and you end up talking about how your wife missed her visitation day with the kids, or you tell all of your friend group everything that your husband has done, what you've caught him doing, what he said to you, you get the idea. When you do this, you are painting a picture in those people's minds against your spouse. And they want to protect you. They love you. They care about you. They are not going to want to encourage you to stand for your marriage, or they may even not support you staying with your marriage after they've heard your side of the story, which is one-sided. So they this is called poisoning the well, because you're essentially what you're doing. It would be like, this is a very country saying, and I'm from the South, so please give me some liberty. But it's like in those smaller cities way back several years ago, 100 years ago, when all they had was a well. Well, if someone were to go in and throw a dead rat in the well, which is what you did when you got angry at someone in the city next to you, if you go and throw that dead rat in the well, then you've poisoned the well. The whole city around that now can't drink from that water. And this is the same premise that you're doing if you start telling everyone about all of the things that are happening in your marriage, especially the bad and the ugly. And when you do that, you're throwing a rat into the well of your marriage. And then when your spouse wants to come back, you've poisoned the well, because now there are all of these people who have a bias against your spouse. And then you have to win back their love for your spouse. You could also view this as burning bridges, where you had a bridge, it was there, and now you have lit it and you're burning the bridge. Most of us don't think about how the things that we say and the way that we act now could impact reconciliation in 6, 9, 12 months from now. But what I'm telling you is, more times than not, I have seen people, spouses that were the wayward spouse, they were the ones that wanted out of the marriage. They finally got to where they wanted to come back. And then when they heard everything that other people knew about them, how their wife had, or their husband had told all of the family, all of the friends about everything that they had done, then they wanted out again, because they said, I can't overcome that. Now that everyone knows, how can I ever show my face again? So I'm asking you to not do those things. Someone just asked, what if I've already done it? Most of us probably have. Here's the thing. If you have done it, then you have the ability now to go back to the people that you've already spoken to go back and say, I spoke out of hurt. I spoke out of anger. I want my marriage to work. My spouse is a good person. I believe they're doing some bad things right now, but I need your support. And I need for you to believe with me that my marriage can be saved. I need you to support me in the decision I've made. So you can go back now and start to mend those things. Also, you could share, I won't say that. I'll leave all of you on the edge. Most of the time, when we paint the picture of what's happening in our marriage to others, it's very one-sided. I remember when my husband and I were going through all of our stuff, I could see everything he was doing wrong. And it was very difficult for me to see what I was doing wrong. So if I were to go to my family or friends and paint the picture of him, which thank goodness I didn't, but if I were, it would have looked pretty much like he was a jerk, which I felt like he very much was a jerk during that time. But I would have left out everything I had done wrong, because why would I share that? We don't paint a full picture for the people in our lives, which makes this even worse. If you have already posted things on social media, go back and delete them, and don't do it going forward. So you can change your behaviors and your actions from this point forward, and you can go back and mend the things that you can mend even before your spouse comes back, because it will help make it easier for your spouse to come back when reconciliation does finally happen. So someone said, is it possible to hide things from a support team that need to be said and still be hurting, like cheating? My wife cheated and nobody knows. I am holding that to try and help her come home, to help her come back. So, and this is where it can get difficult to understand what to do, because we might be thinking, but I know something. I know a behavior that they're engaged in, whether it is an affair, it might be an addiction, it might be alcoholism, it might be something that they're doing where you're saying, I need to get people involved. There does, for many of us, need to be a time when we get certain other people involved, but not because we are venting, because we are looking to how we can most help our spouse. That's when we get into things like interventions, which are rare to do. I don't think all of us should be going out and looking how to do an intervention, but the motivation behind who you would tell and why you would tell it to them is different. If you're looking to gossip, if you're looking to relieve your own anxiety, if you're looking to vent, that is why you need a trusted support team, a trusted person or people that you go to that you can vent to, who understand what you're doing and why you're doing it, and are still going to encourage you to stand for your marriage. That is the difference in who you need to speak to and the kind of things you need to say, but I'll get to that a little later. Number 4, stop worrying about the things that you cannot change. If 2020 has taught us anything, I believe it is this, that there are things that we cannot change, and when we worry about them, it does absolutely no good. I wish I could remember the Seneca quote right now. I had literally written it down over this weekend, but he said something to the effect of, the majority of suffering that we will do in our lives is in our imagination. And that was extremely true for me because I am self-reportedly, I struggle with generalized anxiety disorder. I can be a very anxious person, and Google and my smartphone do not make my life easier. 2 weeks ago, there was something I was so fixated and anxious about and worried about that I was losing sleep. I was making myself sick, and it was ridiculous. You're probably doing something like this too about your marriage. Not only are you worrying about it in general, but you're spending a whole lot of time scouring the internet, watching videos, listening to podcasts that majority of the time probably end up making you feel worse rather than better. Friends, I believe that feeling of I feel worse about myself, I feel worse about my situation is something you should listen to as a reason to stop doing the things you're doing. So I've found this to be true for myself. When I am scouring the internet, worried about something, and I continue to feel worse and worse, I know that's when I need to stop altogether, because nothing's going to make it better. This is more of a mental thing and not a reality thing. And the same is true for your marriage. You might be saying, no, the reality is my marriage is going through a difficult time and I need to know what's going on. My hashback of that to you would be, you're not getting any real answers if it's making you feel worse. You will know truth and truth for your situation when you feel peace. Peace is what will lead you to know what is the right thing to do for yourself and your marriage. And not a blind peace, not where we're just completely ignorant to life and to reality, but a peace that says, this makes sense. This gives me hope. This gives me a path to move forward. Not something that's just making your anxiety worse, making your worried thoughts worse, keeping you up at night worried about things. This may mean that you need to disconnect from your phone, stop listening to the marriage and relationship podcast, stop watching the YouTube videos if it's making you feel worse. Someone said, we can create our own problems in our head. That's absolutely right. I remember, even to this day, even as a professional in this field, I can begin to make the problems in my marriage, which yes, do still exist, but I can make the problems in my marriage worse in my head. Before I've ever addressed them or talked about them with my husband, I can, through my own overanalyzation, make everything go out of proportion. And so what I want to encourage you with is to stop focusing on the things you can't control and instead focus on the things that are going to bring you inner peace. And that may look like, for a period of time, you stop reading all of the marriage stuff or all of the things that, especially when there's contradicting advice, because then you're even more confused, you're even more frustrated, and you don't know what to do. The fifth thing here in following this is to find a trusted support system. So for me, when I go through my periods of anxiety, I do have a trusted support system. I have my doctor, who I love. He's amazing. I trust him. I have my husband. I have my dad. I have certain people that I go to who I know will bring me peace, who will help me see things more clearly, who aren't going to just feed into it, who are going to help me with this. This is what you need for your marriage. This is what I had to have for my marriage when we were going through our difficult times, because I needed to have someone I trusted that was going to give me great, wise advice of what I needed to do and help me understand how to apply it to my specific situation. This is what you need for you as well. Find a trusted support system. Find someone you trust, whether it is a coach like we have at Marriage Helper, a counselor, if you can find a good one who is pro-marriage, because not all of them are. The Save My Marriage course that we have, it has a built-in community with it that is a trusted support system of people who are encouraging you to help stand for your marriage, to stay the course, who have gone through our Save My Marriage course so they understand the right things to do in order to move the marriage forward. So those can all be forms of trusted support systems. And maybe you do have a friend who is going to support you standing for your marriage. But if your friend begins to say things like someone said earlier in the chat, they said, my friend, when I told her about my marriage problem, yelled at me, telling me that she couldn't believe I was going to go back to him. That's not what you want. That's not who you need in your trusted support system. You need someone who's going to be for you and for your marriage and for your spouse and to help you move forward. This also, well, and this is what it could look like, helping you hike that way up the mountain. The sixth thing that you need to do, and one of my favorite things that you can do, is to work on you. Like I said just a few slides ago, we can create our worry in our head. We can start thinking that our spouse is doing the worst of things. We can let our mind get away with us. We can compare ourselves and our relationships to others. We can read horror stories of what happened in other people's marriage and all of a sudden think that that's going to apply to us. We can take this to the extreme, and we can't control any of that. Right now, no matter what your spouse is doing, you can't control your spouse. You can't stop them from leaving. You can't stop them from filing for divorce. You can't stop them from a drinking problem. You can't stop them from a pornography problem. You can't stop them from an affair. You can't stop them doing any of these things. You can begin to work on yourself. You can begin to understand how to have healthy relationships now, and you can encourage them to get help for things that they need to get help with, but you can't force them. You can't make them. That has to come from within themselves. What you can do is work on you. At Marriage Helper, we call it the pies, and I am incredibly passionate about it. So the pies are the things that you can do to begin working on yourself, because we know at Marriage Helper that there's a process to falling in love. We call it the love path. And the process to falling in love starts with attraction. Now, attraction doesn't just have to be that physical attraction. It doesn't just pertain to when you first met your spouse and saw them across the bar or saw them across the college campus or wherever you were. Attraction is something that is lifelong. It's something that continues to keep us attracted to our spouse and continues to help us be more attractive to our spouses. So it's important to constantly be focusing on our attraction. Now, there's 4 types of attraction. There's physical, intellectual, emotional, and spiritual, which stands for the pies. Physical attraction is, yes, it has to do with looks, but even more than that, for you as a person, it has to do with how do you feel about yourself physically. Because if you aren't getting appropriate sleep, if you aren't eating right, if you're not getting out and doing some kind of movement to help you work through a lot of that tension and a lot of those nerves that go through our body, then you probably don't feel amazing physically. And when you don't feel good about yourself or good in your body, then it's going to affect every other area of your pies. It's going to affect that intellectual part of your pies, which is the intellectual part is you going out, learning more, being a fascinating person to talk to. The emotional part of the pies is evoking emotions within others that they enjoy feeling. In spiritual attraction, the spiritual part of the pies is being a person that lives consistently with your beliefs and values. All of these are important. I'm very passionate about them, and I believe these are the things that you can do to begin to work on you. Because at the end of the day, I know that the pies is what changed my life and ultimately ended up changing my marriage around. I said earlier how I was so focused on everything my husband had done wrong. I had a list. I don't know that I ever physically wrote it. God, I hope not. But I had a list in my head of if he changed all of these things, then our marriage would be fine. But the truth was, it wouldn't matter because I hadn't done anything to change myself, to change my perspective, to change my heart, to change being a better wife to him, honestly. And it doesn't matter how amazing or incredibly terrible your marriage might be right now. Every single one of us can do something to be better. But what typically happens is instead we focus on all of the other things in our lives. If this would change, if he would change, if she would change, if that would change, then we think that life would be better. But here's a quote. I don't know who said it. Blaming everybody else is great until you look around and you have no one to blame but yourself. On our Instagram at Marriage Helper, go follow us there if you haven't yet. But every Wednesday we release some new videos. And a question someone asked that I answered a couple of weeks ago is they were talking about this concept of how do you know if you should keep standing? How do you know if you should even try to make your marriage work? To which I replied and I said, so much of the time we believe, or people in culture, society typically believes that if something is hard, then we throw it away and we get something new. This happened with one of my smartwatches a couple weeks ago, right? Like it broke and I didn't know how to fix it. So you just get a new one. But that's not the mindset we should take into our marriages, because even though this one might be difficult, and even though it has problems, the truth of the matter is every relationship is difficult, and every relationship has problems, all of them. At least right now, you know what your problems are. There is no guarantee that by ending this one and starting over, that you're going to be happy. There's no guarantee anything's going to be different, especially if you have not done any work to understand why this one did not work out. And especially if you have not done what has needed to be done to try and make this one work. Because when relationships overcome the most difficult trials, that is when the lifelong satisfaction, the deep satisfaction occurs in the relationship. And wouldn't you rather have a marriage that has lasted for 55, 60 years, where you can look back and say, we have made it through all of it and we are still together? That's what it takes here, but it starts by working on yourself. I know the grass looks greener on the other side, and you may be thinking that your spouse is the one who needs to hear this more than you right now. But for a minute, I want you to stop thinking about your spouse, and I want you to really focus only on you. How can you do things differently to become the best that you can be? For you. You do it for you first. And then after that, as a second benefit, that if anything works to help bring your spouse back to the marriage, that this will as well. That's the mindset to have. Shameless plug here. If you're a podcast listening person and you want even more to help you go through your pies, then you can come and listen to my podcast. I have one all about the pies. You can find it on Apple or anywhere podcasts are available. It's called It Starts With Attraction. And I'd love for you to listen to the episodes. Every week is something tangible that you can do to work on your pies. All right. So let's go to point number 7. Everything is going to be okay. I am so sorry for what you are going through in your marriage right now. And if I could sit with you over coffee and have a heart-to-heart with you and listen to your heart and understand everything that you're going through, I would cry with you. I know I would. But what I would leave every single one of you with, after hearing your heart, understanding your situation, is to tell you that while you can't control what's going to happen, you can only control yourself. You can only work on yourself. What I know is that if you do the right things and you truly work on becoming the best person that you can be and doing right by the people in your lives, that everything is going to be okay. It may not work out the way that you hoped it would. It may look differently than the way that you thought that it would, but it's all going to work for good, one way or another. And I know that might sound cliche, it might sound trite, and I'm not wanting it to be that way. But when I look back at every circumstance in my life, especially the ones that have been the hardest and the most grueling, the one thing that I know for certain is every one of them have worked out. And I'm okay. Today, I am okay. And today, you're okay. And tomorrow, you'll be okay. And in a year from now, you're going to be okay. That doesn't mean it's going to be easy. That doesn't mean it's going to be without pain. But in the end, everything is going to be okay. I have a wonderful and beautiful friend. Her name is Amber. You can see her here. And that's her husband, John Lewis, and her precious and cute little family. This picture was taken recently, but 5 years ago, before that cute little baby was born, and when those other 2 older children were just babes, I mean, just small babies, Amber's husband left her for another woman. Out of the blue. I mean, if you were to talk to Amber about it and ask, it would be, he didn't come home one day and that was it. They had some problems and some issues and things, but nothing that would have made Amber think that this is what would happen. Her older son, who you see there in the little gray cardigan, has a liver disease. So he was 1.5 years old when her husband left with this liver disease that was extremely rare and didn't know what was going to happen with him, left Amber with no job, no ability to get a job, and all of these things. It was incredibly difficult, to say the least. This is when Amber found Marriage Helper. I don't know how she found us. I need to ask her one day how she found us. I don't know how she found us, but when she found us, it was all she could do. She found hope. She found trust. She loved listening to the podcast with Dr. Joe Beam. She would call our client relations team. She spoke with someone on our team probably once a week just because it calmed her nerves and it helped her through this time. He was gone. At this point, he had been gone for 10 months, and Amber was doing everything she knew to do to try and get the marriage to work. She was implementing these things. He didn't want to talk to her. I mean, it was the story that you would think that this story would look like if a man left his wife to be with his affair partner. And she asked him every week for 10 months, or every other week for 10 months, to get marriage help with her, to which every other week he said no. And that they were going to get divorced and all of these things were going to happen, that he was going to go be with this other woman, they were going to be happy, and their marriage was going to be over. Amber took the things that we teach at Marriage Helper, and she made real change in her life. And John Lewis, her husband, began to see things differently, began to see her differently. They started to talk a little bit more. They started to actually be able to have some conversations until John Lewis finally agreed, okay, let's see what we could do for our marriage. So they ended up going to one of our workshops, left the workshop. She still had to implement change. It didn't change overnight, but eventually her husband ended up coming back. And what Amber would tell you is that there was no firework display. There was no running through the front door, through the threshold to sweep me off my feet and apologize for everything he did. But it was a very intentional and thoughtful reconciliation where they had seen change happen. And even though it was difficult and it was muddy and they didn't know what to do, they were wanting to do it together and wanting to try and make it work. And so they did. But if Amber had listened to YouTube, if Amber had listened to her friends, if Amber had listened to all of these podcasts or even the expectations given in the movies, then at any point she could have given up. And the people in her world would have encouraged her to. But she didn't. And not only were they able to reconcile, save their marriage, Amber joined our team, was passionate about what we did. A year after they saved their marriage, she came to us and said, I am passionate about what you do because it saved my marriage. And she has been part of what we do at Marriage Helper, giving hope to thousands of people that she speaks with. And now her and her husband have welcomed a new baby into their marriage, who you see right there. And they are stronger than they have ever been before. It was a story that should not have happened. But it did, because Amber had hope. And she believed that things could change. She believed that her husband was a good person, currently doing a bad thing. She chose to forgive him. She chose to see the good that could come of it. And she did everything she could on a day-to-day basis to move her marriage in that direction. She is one of the strongest women I know. And you can tell because of what has ended up happening in their life, in their marriage. This is available to you as well. I cannot guarantee that these things will work, but I can tell you that even if Amber and her husband, John Lewis, had not gotten back together, that she would still say that she would be a better person because of following the system of what we teach at Marriage Helper to become the best that she could be. The main point is this: there is hope for your marriage, no matter what has happened. And in fact, for those of you who are first time to this webinar, a little bit of the origin story about Marriage Helper is we were founded by Dr. Joe Beam, who you may have seen on our YouTube and on our website and all of those things that we've done. Well, Marriage Helper was not just born out of a great idea that he had, but Marriage Helper was born out of his and his wife's own story of what they have gone through in their relationship. In the 1980s, Dr. Beam was a very successful and prominent speaker. He ended up divorcing his wife, Alice. They were divorced for 3 years, where he would tell you that during those 3 years, he did things he never thought he would do, said things he'd never thought that he'd say. He even, when confronted with letters that he had written, love letters that he had written to Alice back when they were engaged and married, he would look at those and say, I never felt that way towards her. Some of you have even said in the comments, what do I do if they've rewritten history? This is what happens. People might see you in a different light. But at the end of those 3 years, he came to his senses. He called his wife Alice back, asked her to take him back, to which everyone in her life told her not to. You can't trust him. Once a cheater, always a cheater. Why would you do that? You've been 3 years without him now. Why would you go back to that now? But in her heart of hearts, Alice knew it was the right thing to do. She knew that Joe was a good man who had done some bad things. So they got remarried, and they ended up making a testimony out of the tests and trials that they went through with their marriage. They said, how can we help other people to save their marriage, even when there's been affairs, divorce, separation, all of these things? What can we do? So Joe went, he is a researcher, he's a PhD, and he studied all of the best research over a period of several years, 2 decades, to try and figure out what makes marriages work. In 1999, he created our 3-day workshop that has a 77% success rate of saving marriages in crisis, and still continues to this day. It's been going for 21 years. And I am passionate about what we do at Marriage Helper because, as you see, this is my family. I am Dr. Joe Beam's youngest daughter, and I am the daughter that was born after they were divorced. So after they were divorced for 3 years, they remarried and they got back together. I was born in their second marriage to each other. I owe my entire life to two people who ended up doing the right thing, and especially to a mother, Alice, who believed that change was possible and could see a vision and a hope for the future, even when no one else saw it. And if you think about it, the fact that she was willing to take him back and make it work, not just gave me my life, literally, but it's literally given life to thousands, hundreds of thousands of marriages ever since then, which is crazy to think about. Your marriage has that kind of impact as well. You doing the right things has an impact and a legacy that you may never understand. But I want to encourage you to keep fighting and to not give up. And you might be saying, how do I do that? I can't get my spouse to go to a workshop with me. I can't do all of these things. That is why we created the Save My Marriage course, because we knew that people like you who wanted so desperately to, sorry, my phone's going off. It is my dad actually calling me. We knew that you needed something, you needed a plan, you needed a framework, you needed a guide to use to help you through what to do in order to move your marriage forward. So we took everything that we had seen work and we knew from research could work, and we created a framework specifically for the individual looking to save their marriage. And that is what we put in the Save My Marriage course. We have amazing testimonials of people who have gone through our course. One of my favorites is the person who says, for the first time in a long time, I face the future of our marriage with hope. Another person who said, I feel like I've tried everything and nothing clicked like this did. It just makes sense. And someone else who said, it's really been a lifesaver for me. I love hearing that because it shows that what we do has worked. And the reason that you showed up today to this webinar is because you're tired, because you're stuck, and because you're scared. And you had to make extra effort to show up to this webinar because of all the technical glitches. But you were so motivated to learn something, to hear something that would give you hope. And I hope that what I have said so far has given you hope. But more than that, I want you to know that we have a framework that you can follow, a plan to follow in what we have created with the Save My Marriage course. And here's the thing, the Save My Marriage course that we have is closing its doors for good November 17th. Yes, you heard that correctly. We are closing down this current Save My Marriage course. And I'll tell you why in just a minute. But in the course, it's 10 weeks that you can follow that tell you exactly what you need to understand, learn, and do differently every single week in order to see real change happen in your marriage. With the Save My Marriage course, you get exclusive and private invitation to a Facebook group, an invitation-only Facebook group, a private Facebook group that you can be a part of other people who are also in the Save My Marriage course. So you have that trusted community. So with the videos, the 10 weeks of videos, you have the framework and the plan that is trusted and research proven and has worked in the lives of thousands of people. With the exclusive Facebook group, you have that trusted community. And then with our weekly group support calls that are led by our marriage helper coaches, then you have extra trusted support as well. And you get 10 weeks of those with this Save My Marriage course. Plus, for the people who join the Save My Marriage course before November 17th, you also get a special VIP invite to a support call led by Dr. Joe Beam. This is something you don't have access to normally. This is something special that we're doing for you for this final open of our Save My Marriage course. And then in January, you will get a free upgrade to the new Save My Marriage course material that'll launch in January of 2021. So you're basically getting two Save My Marriage courses for one in this. Now, the Save My Marriage course is only for you. This is not something you do with your spouse. It's not something that you fly to Tennessee to do. It's not our workshop. This is our online Save My Marriage course meant for you to go through alone as an individual. So someone just asked, how do I ask my spouse to do this course? You don't ask your spouse to do this course. I believe that real change can occur even by just you learning the things that you can begin to do. And if your spouse is not willing to get marriage help right now or do anything with the marriage right now, then that doesn't mean that you should stop. That should not stop you from doing the things you know can make change in your marriage, which is why we've created the Save My Marriage course. So you get all of these things. You basically get 2 courses in one. It's a one-time fee. It's not monthly. Can you do it quicker than 10 weeks? You could, but I encourage you to not go through it in 3 days because you can do it as quick or as slow as you want. We recommend you do it over the actual 10 weeks so that you can actually learn and implement the things that you're learning to see change happen. If you go through it too quickly, then you might hear everything, but you're not able to actually implement it. The implementation is what makes the huge difference. Lots of questions. So some of you are having questions about our 3-day workshop. If you are wanting a more specific plan on the best thing you can do to help your marriage. So if you're saying, I hear about the Save My Marriage course, I know you have coaching as well, I know you have a workshop, and I don't know where to start, I don't know the best thing for my situation, then our client relations team, our client relations representatives can help you determine, they can hear your situation. It's a complimentary call. They can listen to your situation and help guide you to which is the best thing for you to do first or the one for you to do next. And they can help you make a customized plan of what you should do and the resources you should use to help you work on your marriage. So if you're wanting to have more specific questions answered, then I would encourage you to reach out and get connected with one of our client relations representatives who will be able to help you get through that. So the other thing that I didn't even mention is, so not only do you get 2 courses for the price of one between now and November 17th, but you also are going to save an extra $50 off of it. So this is the best offer that you're going to get because we believe that you need to be in the best position possible to face the holidays. We know that the holidays are stressful in general, very stressful for marriage, and we're entering into that season right now. And so these 10 weeks and the 10 weekly group support calls will be able to help you move through that the best way possible. And I really do believe that. I really do believe that what you learn in the Save My Marriage course is going to be the best thing that you can use and understand to face the future of whatever your marriage holds. How does this course work if I attend alone? Well, the course is intended for you to do alone. The Save My Marriage course is intended to be done by yourself, just you, because we are going to be helping you understand what went wrong in the marriage. We're going to help you learn how to understand the reason behind the statements that your spouse is saying. So if your spouse is saying things like, I love you, but I'm not in love with you, or I need time for myself, or I just need space, we're going to help you understand what are some possible reasons your spouse might be saying that. We're going to guide you through how you can work on your pies. We're going to be giving you a workbook that comes with it so that you can identify your, what we call aha moments, and go through and write down the things that made huge sense to you. We're going to teach you how to change the way that you interact with each other, change the way that you interact with your spouse, know when to contact them, know when to not contact them. And then this is a little bit of a teaser for January when the new Save My Marriage material comes out, which you will be upgraded to for free. If you're currently a Save My Marriage member, or if you get the Save My Marriage course between now and November 17th, then you will have the option to upgrade to the new Save My Marriage course at no cost. And so in that new Save My Marriage course, we're going to be talking a lot about how you can push and pull your spouse into and away from your marriage. What should you do when there are times that you need to push? We'll talk more about attorneys, how to get one, how to know when to get one, how to protect yourself. So many amazing things coming in addition to the material in the current Save My Marriage course, which is already tested and true. It's been around for 5 years. It's worked for thousands of people and done really great things. Some people are saying, even if you're divorced, can you go through this? And the answer is yes. We have had many people go through this course, even if they have been divorced, because it still taught them what they can do in that relationship, especially if you have kids together. You still have a relationship and you still have a chance and opportunity to remarry in the future. So the things that we teach you in this course will still give you the guidance that you need, even if you have been divorced or are divorced, or even if there's divorce on the table. Some people, there's a couple of comments that are about what if an affair partner is pregnant? That is the story I used last week in a webinar that I did, where we have seen so many times where someone has gotten pregnant because of the affair, whether it's the wife of the marriage being saved or whether the husband got someone else pregnant, and we have still seen marriages saved. There is still hope. I would love to see all of you inside of the Save My Marriage course. I believe that you can do this. I believe that you can stand for your marriage. I believe that you have the strength to be able to do it, and I believe that you can. I believe that your marriage can be saved. It's not going to be easy, but I believe that you can do the things that will lead you toward that path of your marriage being saved. And even if it's not, that you will end up becoming a better and stronger person no matter what because of it. And I believe that the Save My Marriage course that we have created can teach you how. I would love to see all of you in it. And bonus, if you join the Save My Marriage course before tomorrow, which is November 10th, then you'll get an extra weekly group support call. So you don't have to wait until November 17th when the doors close, but you can go ahead and join now and get a free bonus support call that's going to be happening tomorrow night. So go ahead and get that as well. We would love to see you inside the course. If you have further questions, if you want to speak to someone to know that the Save My Marriage course really is going to be the best thing for you, then feel free to reach out to our team. We will send out an email after this, but you can also go out to marriagehelper.com and you can fill out a form for someone to reach out to you, or you can even call our office at 866-903-0990. We would love to get you connected, and we would love to see you inside the Save My Marriage course. But more than anything, I hope you believe that there's hope for your situation. Your marriage can be saved, and it can be better than ever. We would love to work and walk with you through this journey that you're on. I'll see you guys later, and I hope to see you inside the Save My Marriage course.